through our parents. What fascinates me is that every time she writes a new book, she dresses up as a character. So I'm so looking forward to this book launch too, and I want to congratulate you on it. And I want to acknowledge a few people before I go. I better put my goggles on. I'd like to acknowledge Marie-Louise, Director General, Catherine, Director of Reader Services. I stand here in this place where once my Ngunnawal ancestors, practiced culture, raised their families. I am a proud Ngunnawal woman as I carry my ancestors in spirit, walking into the future, teaching the next generations about the oldest culture in the world, my culture, the Ngunnawal Aboriginal culture. I'd like to pay my respects to my elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to our First Nations people here this evening. But I'd also like to acknowledge the non-Indigenous as well as the many cultures here this evening as well. In keeping in the general spirit of friendship and reconciliation, it gives me great pleasure once again to welcome you to the land of the Ngunnawal people. And on behalf of my family and the other Ngunnawal families, I say welcome. But you ain't going to get rid of me that quick. I've got one more thing to say. You know, the failure from the referendum last year and how First Nations people's hearts are still broken. We're still ailing. So on the 29th of November this year, at Stage 88 Commonwealth Park, you're all invited, because I'm putting a concert on, and it's called Rocking for Reconciliation, but also Against Racism. So it's a free event. All you need to do is bring yourself, bring your family, bring a picnic lunch and a picnic blanket, and let's rock on for 2025. Thank you all so much. Enjoy the evening.
I'll be there. Yuma, good evening everyone. A very warm welcome to the National Library of Australia and for this book launch event for Red Dust Running by Anita Heiss. I'm Marie-Louise Ayres and it's my privilege to be Director General of the Library. To begin, I would like to thank Auntie Vi for providing the welcome to country tonight, as she has done so beautifully on many occasions in this place. I also acknowledge First Australians as the traditional owners and custodians of this land, and give my respect to elders past and present, and through them to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. We are really, really aware that we undertake our work for the nation on the lands of the Ngunnawal peoples, and I especially acknowledge their custodianship of land, culture, art, story and language on this land in which we're meeting tonight. Now, we're very lucky to be joined by Dr. Anita Heiss to celebrate her latest book, Red Dust Running. Auntie Vi has talked about Anita's lovely costume, and I have to say I'm feeling distinctly underdressed tonight. And there you go. All right. But it's just wonderful, and it's a bit of, brightness in our world, actually. Anita is an internationally published award-winning author and editor of more than 20 books. She's a proud member of the Wiradyuri Nation of Central New South Wales, an ambassador for the Indigenous Literacy Foundation, an organisation that we feel very closely aligned to here at the library, and the Go Foundation, and she's Professor of Communications at the University of Queensland. Anita is also the publisher at large of Bunji, I hope I've got that correct, Bunji, an imprint of Simon & Schuster, Cultivating First Nations Talent. And facilitating this discussion tonight is Catherine Favell, our beloved Director of Reader Services here at the library. So please join me in welcoming Anita and Catherine, and Anita is going to kind of lead us off. So.
Mandangul for that introduction. Maringeria, Yuandu Anita Heiss, Baladu Wiradyuri Geelong, Arambichibu, Branglibu, Megandi, Bala Williams, Indamaladu Wiradyuri, Bulga Bulga Galangbu, Balagi Bangbu, Balambumbu, Nurumbanbu, Yinjamaradu, Ngunnawal Main. Good evening, everybody. I said probably with a terrible Aussie accent, and may or may not be roused on for my pronunciation by Arnie Elaine later, but I attempted to say, good evening, my name's Anita Heiss, and I have Wiradyuri belonging from Arambi and Brungle missions. I'm a Williams. I honour my own Wiradyuri elders, Arnie Elaine, Arnie Vi, thank you for that beautiful welcome to country. And my old people, my ancestors, and my own country, because that's where my spirit comes from, where my spirit will rest, and my purpose in life every day comes from as well. And I pay my respects to the first storytellers of this place, the Ngunnawal peoples. And Yinjamara is my favourite word because it means to pay respect, to be honourable, to be polite and to be gentle. And I feel there's a lot of warmth and kindness in this room tonight, and I hope that you can embrace the Wiradyuri values that I've attempted to bring to the room and through this book. So thank you.
Thank you, Anita, and welcome back to the National Library. And I have to say, I have had the best time reading Red Dust Running, and it is a book filled with warmth and kindness and belonging and thinking about how we talk to each other and how we rub up against each other and get along. So
I was waiting for when you were going to get to the rubbing up against each other. It's in there. It's in there.
There is a bit, but it's not as spicy as you might think. So, welcome back. You've been a great champion of the National Library. It's been a while since we've seen you. I think you were here in 2018 to help us launch Sorry Day, which is still selling like hotcakes. So thank you for sprinkling your magic dust over that book. And of course, you come back every 7 years or so to participate in our oral history program 7 years on. So we are thrilled to have you back, but especially thrilled to be here celebrating you and your new book, which is lovely. To kick us off, Red Dust Running is your fifth rom-com, but it's been over 10 years since your last, which has up until now has been my favourite, Paris Dreaming. What drew you back to the genre?
I didn't even realise it was that long, 10 years. So what happened was we were in COVID. I was writing Billa Yadadanglang Duray, The River of Dreams, about the Gundagai flood. And I got a phone call about potentially doing something for Audible, because this book actually came out as an Audible book first. And Audible Australia, Audible wanted to do something. We're in a moment of time, we all know during that time how much anxiety was in the world and people were dying and nobody knew what was, we're in a pandemic and nobody knows what's going on, and they wanted to do a series of books that were uplifting. And I had always wanted to go to a rodeo. I don't know why. I've been now, I don't need to go to another one, but always wanted to go to a rodeo. And so I thought, and everything, when I want to do something, whether it's like running in Hawaii or going to a rodeo or going to a cruise, I'm like, let's see if I can write this off on tax and turn it into a book, right? And so I had this, knocked up a page going, there's going to be this cool group of girls that go from Brisbane. I wanted to go to the Mount Isa rodeo is the big one, but it's really, I couldn't get there. So I thought I'll do this book. I was quite exhausted from writing Billa Yadadanglang Duray. So in some ways, this book, and even this version of this book that's just come out, it's almost the palate cleanser between the serious historical fiction. Not that there's not serious moments in this, but part of me also wants to show always that we are more than the politics as people frame it as. We are women who have serious friendships, beautiful friendships. I have many of these women in the room today, that we are whole and complete, and we have careers, and we want companionship, whatever that companionship looks like, just like other women want them. So it was sort of a gift that they gave me, and it came out as an audio book, and now it's a tree book.
We're going to talk a bit about your method writing in a minute, but was there much of a leap from taking it from an audiobook to a traditional softcover?
Well, more than I knew there was. So I wrote the first draft as I would write a normal novel. And so there's these 4 women and they're talking over each other and having a good time and lots going on, and I submit the novel and I have to rewrite it into the point of view really of just one character, Annabelle, because I was writing them all the characters' lives and journeys in one, which you can do on the page, but when you're in a studio you've got one narrator, it can be quite confusing. So I did learn that writing for audio is very different. To be conscious of, you've got one narrator, so tell the story through one POV, as it were. So that was stressful back at the time because, you hand it in and you want it to be done with. But it was a good learning curve for me also.
But you haven't gone back to that multiple point of view for this version of it. You've stuck with Annabelle as the narrator. Were you ever tempted to completely pull it apart and go back to that first version? Or?
Do more work?
Yeah.
No, because there was a light edit done on this by Alana Hunt, who's a fantastic First Nations editor. No, there was... And also because I want people, if they... I would like them to be as close as possible, for people. Sometimes people listen to the audio while reading the paperback, so which is an interesting thing to do as well. No, I never ever thought about that. Ever. I do not recommend that to anybody. Don Bemrose, writing a novel, yeah.
Why do you think rom-coms are having a moment?
I think Book Talk has a huge place in that, because is anyone on TikTok to look at Book Talk and so forth? So that's where all the rom-coms live and thrive and are highlighted. So I think TikTok has really brought rom-coms into the limelight, but also there's a really strong romance reading community. I'm also a member of Romance Writers Australia, and massive online groups and reading groups and so forth. And it's, I guess, since 50 Shades of Grey, reading romance or reading erotica is, not so embarrassing anymore. I've spoken to booksellers who have told me that people have entered their bookshops having never bought a book before, but they went and bought, 50 Shades of Grey. Not that that's romance, but it is, writing about relationships and sex and so forth. And there's that. There's also the happily ever after that romance is meant to deliver. Who doesn't want a happily ever after? I want happily ever after. And there's the connection that readers can have with characters and wanting to see themselves in the relationships that some of these characters are having. And it's interesting because I'm not really thought of as a romance writer, I don't think, but more of writing in a First Nations genre, which has all those things in there. But I was in Adelaide last year for the Romance Writers Conference. People paid $40 to come into the expo just to get autographs. Right? How much did you mob pay to come tonight? Just like, you want to buy a book, nothing's for free. No, I was fascinated. People came in with trolleys and suitcases of books of their favourite authors. Now, many of those authors aren't traditional publishers. So a traditionally published author is someone who's with like Random House or Simon & Schuster and so forth. Many of those authors are self-published, but the readers just care about the story they're reading and they follow these authors. And so I've seen that it's a community. Romance writers don't get shortlisted in literary awards. Yeah. They don't even get entered in literary awards. It's a completely different world. And so this community of readers and writers just support each other. And there's a romance reading retreat. And I went to that on the Gold Coast last year as an author. And again, I met readers, not all women or genders. I met people who had travelled from Western Australia for the weekend on the Gold Coast to meet authors and talk about romance books. So they're readers. I met people from Ballarat. I think I met 6 women from Ballarat. Some of them didn't even know each other. What's the chance of that? 6 people from Ballarat on the Gold Coast to talk about romance reading. And it was extraordinary. But even these women, people were coming up to me saying, I've read Billa Yada Danglang Duray, but they're at a romance thing. So they're reading across genre, which you don't necessarily find with people who read literary fiction. Because readers in the room and librarians will know there's this BS hierarchy where rom-coms are down the bottom of the hierarchy, just above westerns, which nobody writes anymore, right? And so it's almost seen as, it's a dumbing down. And I think I was criticised originally when I wrote Not Meeting Mr. Right. I was criticised for dumbing down my writing. But the reviewers didn't understand that I had a purpose, and that was to reach as many women readers as I can about the things that I think all Australians should be thinking about. So yeah, there's sex and shopping and so forth, but there's stuff that matters in the other. I mean, sex and shopping matters. There's a hierarchy. But there's stuff, other stuff that we know, social justice, and that matters as well. And it is possible to marry the both.
Yeah. We actually have a book stack here at the library called the Mills and Boon stack. And when you take people to see it, they forget everything else that they have seen on their way through. It's the Mills and Boon stack with all the Mills and Boons and Harlequin romances lined up against a wall.
Have you got an Anita stack?
We could have an
Then
Anita
have like
stack.
a chocolate stack.
Keep writing and we'll have an Anita stack. You talked about your historical fiction, and so you did kind of seem to do a bit of a pivot.
Yep.
After Paris Dreaming, and we had Barbed Wire and Cherry Blossoms about the Cowra breakout of 1944. And apologies, I'm about to make a bit of a mess of this, but I'm going to give it a go. Bila Yaradungalang River of Dreams, about the Great Flood of Gundagai.
Well, I will give you a credit.
Okay.
But before you go to the next one, I'm going to go to a quick story, because I did a video on the title for Demix Booksellers and thought I was this one-take wonder, did this video, put it online, and people had texted me going, I'm in the car park practising it. 3 days later, Bajaji rings me up and I'm driving along Main Street Kangaroo Point. I remember this because I nearly drove off the road. And she said, oh, Barb, I just saw that video on Facebook. You know you said it wrong. And I was horrified. And there's a longer story to that, and Helen and Candy are in the audience and they know that story, but I was horrified. So but the point of that was that Helen reminded me that I started learning what should have been my first language at the age of 50. So we're going to make mistakes. And so, I'll give you a distinction because you're just learning now.
Well, wait.
Wait. And then the next one.
And the next one.
Dirayawata.
Dirayawata.
Okay.
Rise Up. That is a harder one.
Dirayawata.
Which was about the frontier wars and resistance, resilience and love on the frontier.
Yeah.
What triggered that change of direction for you?
I don't think it was a conscious... It wasn't like I'm going to move now into writing historical fiction, because I don't really have aspirations to write in any particular culture, in any particular genre. What happens is I have an idea or I'm inspired by a conversation or an observation, and then the story grows from there. And what happened was I'd done Titters in between there, which is about 5 women living in Brisbane, and I wrote that book because I love Brisbane and I don't think most people see Brisbane for all it is, and I wanted to write something set up there. But I was in Pearl Harbor, I think Titters had come out, and I was in Pearl Harbor, and I'd been there before, but it was the first time I noticed that most of the tourists at Pearl Harbor are Japanese. And I just found that really fascinating, because history, the remembering and recording of history is completely subjective, right? And so the history at Pearl Harbor is obviously through a very American lens, and the history of Hiroshima is through a very Japanese lens. They're two different ways of looking at that history. But I'm there and I'm thinking, I wonder what these Japanese tourists are thinking watching this very challenging footage of people. Has anyone been to Pearl Harbor? It's quite challenging to watch, obviously, because it's wartime. And I thought to myself, there was nothing that I had read or seen, because there's docos about the Cowra breakout that actually mentioned that men from Cowra went to war, some never returned, that in 4.5 miles in a straight line from the prisoner of war camp was Arambi Station, where Aboriginal people were living under the Act of Protection and policy of assimilation and had less rights than the POWs. So the Italian soldiers could leave the POW camp, and they went and worked in the market gardens, and local people preferred the labour of Italian POWs than Kuris. And Japanese soldiers were fed rice and fish and so forth, and they had their own hospital on the POW camp, a base, whereas my mum was getting rations from the old horse shed, and the hospital was segregated and the cinema was segregated. And we treated POWs, rightly so, to the letter of the law under the Geneva Convention. But, I thought to myself, we're not even in the story. We're not even in the landscape of that military history. So I emailed Laurie Bamblett, who lives in Cowra. I said, I don't live there. I don't live at Arambi. I don't live there. If you tell me this is a bad idea, I want to use my mum's memories. My mum was alive. My mum was born in 1937 on Arambi, and so I want to use her memories. And he basically said, no one's got the right to say your mum can't tell her own story. So I felt like that gave me some okay to do that. And then the flood story about Yardie and Jackie, I wasn't in Gundagai, but I saw it all unfolding in terms of the sculpture that was what's the word for it? Unveiled. And I was thinking, how is it the whole country doesn't know about this? Everyone knows about the dog in the tucker box.
Yeah.
I give a book away every time I do an event and someone sings a song on the road to Gundagai. But how don't they know this? And so that was the inspiration for that. And then in that time, I started learning language, and I was messaging my publisher saying, I want to use this, I want to say this. And then we just had the 200th anniversary. So those books are about making a contribution, because I'm not living on my own country. I have a platform, I have an opportunity, and I work in schools and I see where the lack of knowledge exists, all those gaps in knowledge. So those books are specifically for getting people to learn more about our shared history. I don't know what the question was, but that's the answer you got.
That's a great answer.
Everybody online's gone to bed already, but anyway.
Whatever the question, that was a great answer. But it does make me want to think about the link, whether there is a through line from the rom-coms through the historical fiction, which is about putting First Nations women and First Nations people back into the stories that they have not been part of.
Yeah, thank you. That's right. That was part of the question. So it is. So that they're different purposes, but the goal is to write us into the literary landscape.
Yeah.
History wants to write us into the history. I think someone said, one of the reviews or something said about is repeopling us into the landscape. The rom-coms, originally, when they first came out, they were called chick lit. And the difference between chick lit and rom-coms is, I don't even know if they call anything chick lit now, but at the end of a chick lit story, there doesn't have to be happily ever after in terms of romance. That's not the goal. The goal is the journey of the woman, whatever that journey is. Maybe it's career, maybe it's spiritual growth, and so forth. It's not I've got to meet a man, or I've got to meet a woman, or I've got to meet someone sort of thing. It's about her journey is whatever her journey is. And so for me, the process is exactly the same. If you're looking at a link, the process is the same. So I write a synopsis, then I do character breakdowns, then I do the research, and then I'm a plotter. There's two types of writers. There's plotters and pantsers. A plotter maps the whole story out, like an essay plan for the book. Who would be a plotter? Anyone a plotter? And pantser, where you just have the big picture? Okay, so I'm a plotter, and I can have a book come out one a year, and my pantser friends have one every 5 years. So there's a tip for you, right? So if you want to map it out, friends, map it out. And then I, write and so forth. And I think what they have in common is actually telling stories through just my lens. So I'm not speaking on behalf of everybody, obviously, but I'm always encouraging people. You don't have to read my books, but be reading books by First Nations peoples, learning about who we are, learning about our shared history through our lenses. And I've had students say to me, you're saying we can't read books about black people by white people, and that is absolutely not, I am not saying that. What I'm saying is be conscious of the lens that the author has written through. And I always say, if I want to learn about farming, I'm going to buy a book by a farmer, not a book by a stockbroker. So just be conscious of the lens. And for me, I'm always looking for the gaps. Where are the gaps? We want our young kids to be reading. We need to write books that brown kids can see brown kids on, right? And I want all Australian kids to have diversity in their reading. So that's why sometimes I work in the children's space as well.
You've led us very beautifully into the next question, which is about your method and how you went about writing Red Dust Running. And we have some beautiful things to show you.
Oh, I don't know if they're beautiful.
They are
but
beautiful.
So I'm a method writer, and that means getting into character, sometimes staying in character. And I can't tell you how much work it is carrying this hat on planes. And I'm sure people think I'm some country hillbilly girl on a plane for the first time. And I'm like, I'm a professor. You stay down that side of the plane. Where's the rope, Virgin? Put that rope up. Right. So I thought what I'd do is, so you could see, and is there anybody in the room that actually wants to write? Is writing a book? Yep. Awesome. Well, hopefully this will help. Some hands up back. Okay. So getting into character means buying in tax-deductible things that you can wear, right? Mind you, there's nothing on that slide that I want to reuse. No. So the bling jeans. So I go in. This is all in the book. She goes up shopping. Everything's material. Everything is material. I go shopping, I get the bling jeans for $11. But I tell you, they were so comfortable. I kept them for some time after and just wore a shirt that went down over the blings, right? And the shoes I got in Rocky for $4, bargain. I was looking for red and green for the Rabbitohs grand final and I found those. And the bag. This is what I did not wear. Now, I had a Facebook group, I had a little Facebook page for my friends, my research assistants who came to the rodeo and things with me. And so they were posting things all the time. What about this? What about that? I mean, if I could wear that, I would wear that. Not the Crocs, but the other outfit.
Did you see that at the rodeo?
No.
Okay.
Rodeos aren't like that.
Yeah.
Rodeos aren't like that. Now, what's going on here? Okay, so the first thing I did is I went to the Professional Bull Riders Association event in Rockhampton. Has anybody been to one of those? A whole new world. It's like another planet. And I'm showing these photos because I want to show you. So I'm taking photos. I realised when I was trying to make this, most of the footage I've got is videos. So I could watch the videos so I could hear what the commentators were saying and so forth. I wanted to show, look, I'm drinking beer out of a plastic cup. Don't normally do that. Getting into character. I know on the end there, Naomi. So I have a character, Naomi. It's named after my friend Naomi, who lived up that way. I wanted to show you so you can see back inside. It's an inside. It's indoors. This thing, the Bull Riders Association, and so I'm taking. These are the photos of the guys, so I can write about what they're wearing and so forth. Extraordinary. The next day, and it happens in the novels as well. In the novel. Annabelle and I, as a researcher in character, go to the Capricorn Caves. The first thing they tell us, there's no acknowledgement to country. There's no, the Durrumbul people have been living here for millennia. It was first discovered in 1881 by Norwegian migrant John Olsen. You think so? I'm just looking at people and like. I couldn't believe, so I had to write to Tourism Queensland about that. So there's a conversation around that in the novel where Dossie says, oh, you're always being political, right? So that's... But
I actually think Tourism Queensland needs to hire you. Because
they can't afford me. No. But, I mean, and I put something on Instagram and then everyone's piling on Tourism Queensland. But, I mean, really? Anyway, so it's the beef capital of Australia. And the bulls and people steal the testicles off the bulls and everything. So in the novel, they go and do the selfies. So I did this and then wrote the novel. So I go and get the selfies and do all the things and so forth. But one character is a vegan. So we can deal with, animal cruelty. She does the whole RSPCA thing. And so there's a bit of banter in there about that. All bases covered. There's a character in there, and this is true, who does the whole PDF of the girls' weekend away. So we can't see it there, but it had, how the whole thing. And in this, you've got the whole list of where we're staying, what we're doing, timetable, park run. There were conversation starters for Saturday night, right? My beautiful friend did this. And so we go on a girls' trip. I go to the Warwick Rodeo and Gold Cup camp draft. I go a day early, and what happens in the novel, it's me. She's like, I was quite old then, 50-something. But even I'm going, I don't know, what should I wear? I'm sitting outside the gate. What are the women are wearing? Should I change these boots? I had boots. I borrowed boots, nearly crushed my toes. That happens in the novel too.
Yeah. Boots are a big part of it.
Boots are a big part of it. So I go to the Australian Rodeo Heritage Centre. I think it was there that I learnt about Lancelot Albert Skewthorpe. And so that is the name of the horse, Sir Lancelot, that Dusty rides in the novel. I run around Federation Park. It's a little bit of I hope I'm sure not. I've had 2 First Nations editors read this book, so I feel like I'm covered. But it's a little. I'll let you think about Tidda Lick and where that goes in the conversation. But I run around the park, so she runs around the park. And then I go to the camp draft by myself, and because I'm a method writer, tax deductions, I go to the Ariat shop, because Ariat's a big thing, and they buy the shirt, and then I take quite a long time to buy my hat, which I have to wear everywhere because it's expensive. And I said, they're trying to sell me these hats. I go, I need some I can wear in Brisbane. That, anyway, so do all those things. Now, the idea of these photos is, it's about, I then go back and look at, who was in the stands, what are they wearing, what are people doing, writing about all your senses. Can you see? What can you smell? What can you hear? So I'm doing all the commentating, and I'm using that in the novel. And so these are my friends. They don't know I've got these photos up here today. And so I've got a video. So they have these clowns acting, and they're telling these jokes. And I'm thinking any minute it's going to turn into some really bad Trump thing. And the jokes are going like lead balloons, and we don't know where it's going to go. But then they start singing Sweet Caroline. So we're totally into it, right? Watch the video back. We're the only people in the sand singing it, right? So we stick out like city slicking dog balls, like you wouldn't believe, right? And so we go through the market stalls. So I've got that in the novel. I didn't know this. Pearls are a big thing for the women at rodeos. So there's pearls and so forth. So it's a whole road trip. I go a day early, but then people come in my car. There's Ange, Emma and Christine. And we go to the Ugg boot lady. I'm not an Ugg boot person, but that's in the book. We go to the Big Apple. We go to some Christmas shop. We go to the border. And we do the Queenslander thing. So, and then just by chance, and I think I get like a whole chapter out of this, I take myself to the Gold Coast to write for, 5 to 10 days at a time. And the weekend I get there, the Groundwater Country Music Festival's on. So I put on my cut-off denim jeans, too old for those. Anyway, and that's the view from my hotel room, and that matters because Dusty's scared of heights. And I walk around the markets, and that's in there because she buys Dusty something from the markets, and I'm doing all the things, and I go and listen to some bands, and I'm taking notes, and a lot of that appears in the novel. And then I see on the program Troy Cassar-Daley is performing. So I go to find where the stage is, so where the white chairs are. I go there, find that, right, that's where to go tonight. Then we go there with another research friend, and we go there and we watch Troy Cassar-Daley. And then, do we do this now?
Let's do this.
Okay.
Yep.
And so this was Catherine's idea about doing a reading. So
this is one of my favourite bits in the whole book. There are many favourite bits, but this one's special.
She picked the cleanest bit in the whole book. But
also, I had to find a bit that didn't give away a plot point.
We haven't even told you what the story's about yet, have we, really? It's 4 friends, they live in Brisbane. It's really a story about female friendship and a cowboy, a hot cowboy. Anyway, so I did this. So this Annabelle is a runner. So the Red Dust running is that she's known for their friends. Her cousin Angel sort of chastises her for running away from problems and so forth. But she's also physically a runner, and she runs a lot in the morning with her neighbour Michael. Anyway, so she's at the rodeo, day before the rodeo, and she's out for a run. I rise early with the sun. I love walking in a new place and seeing the landscape at dawn. I pull on my activewear and head to the river for a run, passing locals out for morning walks, and take in the lush landscape after what appears to be recent rain. I think about my own country, back in Wagga Wagga, and the Murrumbidgee, laughing to myself about what the locals call the Wagga Beach. I miss my mare gun and the barbecues and catch-ups they often have on the weekends. I don't know when I'll get back down there again, but the aunties and uncles are also asking when I'll be back. It's just such a long trip if I can't get a direct flight. I take a deep breath and close my eyes for a second. Then I look at this landscape that reminds me a little of my own country, and I feel a pang of guilt about not going home enough, as much as I want to, as much as I should. I tell myself to make the most of the beauty around me today. My friends and my work are important too, and at least today I can be somewhere that looks a little like my own Nurrumbung. I run for about 1 kilometre, then slow my pace to stare at the river gums in front of me. I take my earbuds out and walk to one of the trees. I get in as close as I can, wrap my arms around its trunk and hug tightly. Leave some love for someone who may need it later, my late Nana Sony told me as a child. A lone tear runs down my cheek as I remember when I was at my lowest in Sydney after the scandal broke. Nana was no longer with us by then, and I missed her so much during that time. The hardest thing since she passed over has been not being able to yarn with her whenever I want to. I hadn't even been able to find a tree to hug, to draw extra love from. As I step back from the gum, I hope the love I leave today will help someone else later.
That's beautiful, but that piece for me also starts to tease out some of the things that are happening in the book. There is the rodeo, and there are some gorgeous men, and there's shopping and fabulous places to go. Like if you're thinking of going to Queensland, here is your itinerary. Just pick up the book and follow in Annabelle/Anita's footsteps. But it also, I think, feels to me like the book is really exploring belonging and longing and country and friendship. And I wonder what you might think about that.
Well, there's a few things. So with all those rom-coms, the characters, and Tidders in particular, the 3 of the 5 characters are Wiradyuri, and they're always looking for things in Brisbane that carry them home, whether it's running along the river or jacaranda trees and so forth. For me, though, all of those books are about the strength of sisterhood, the way I see it. And they're about the women that we have in our lives, sisters, biological sisters, friends we call sisters, tidders and so forth, who love us unconditionally, and who we manage to manoeuvre through long-term friendships, even when we have breakdowns in communication, or we don't see each other for long periods of time, or we don't always agree on worldviews or personal decisions, but we always have each other's back. And some of those people in the audience this evening got my back and my front. And so for me, it's about that. And it's also about that these women are intelligent and capable and fabulous and flawed because we're flawed, but articulate. And I want to always showcase Indigenous excellence, because all that other stuff is done quite well by everybody else. Yep. And, there's First Nations women in the audience tonight who are CEOs, who are running NGOs, who are academics, artists. They work in education, they're policymakers, they're language teachers. And I want to see those women represented on the page. And even for our men, because one of the first interviews I did for one of my books, it was by a gentleman, Journo, and he said to me, first thing he said to me is, well, you've written men who are actually really nice. And I said, well, because I write about the men that I know in my world. The Wiradyuri men, the black men and the non-Indigenous men in my world are respectful and kind and thoughtful. And so it's easy for me to write that. Again, answering the question I wished you asked, I'm being a politician, I'm not sure. So you're asking about, and country, yeah. So, and also, again, it's about, because I don't live on my land. I live, up in Mugginjin, which is Brisbane, and it's in some ways it's easy to live on someone else's country because you have to get involved in the politics. It's great.
There is a bit in Annabelle's that Annabelle talks about not being on country, and she talks about having asked her elders if she could leave country to pursue her dreams.
Is that the conversation with Dusty?
It is the conversation with Dusty.
Annabelle's all furious about the caves and wants to talk about that. And Dusty's a cowboy. He doesn't read. He's a very simple man. He has a very hot body. He drinks Coca-Cola for breakfast and has a ciggy for breakfast. He's at the other end of the spectrum. She's a high overachieving, works in the arts, runs a gallery and so forth. And he says to her, and this is what you can use dialogue for, those conversations. He says to her, well, it's all well and good for you to be up here making all the noise, but what are you doing down in your own country? And it really pushes all her buttons, because he's right in a way. And then it's about, the lack of opportunities in what she wanted to do with her career. And I know from my own world that my elders are happy for all of us if we're living healthy, happy, productive lives and we're safe regardless of where we live, as long as we're taking care of ourselves. And so she says that she wouldn't, and I even know when I moved to Brisbane, if my mother said to me, I don't want you to go, I wouldn't have gone. And everyone else knew I was going for 6 weeks, and they're going, what'd your mum say? You told your mum yet? And because I knew that if she said to me, I don't want you to go, I would have stayed with her. Mm-hmm. And so in the novel, she says, she spoke to from memory, that, that she got, the elders were okay because it's about her career opportunities also were limited as a curator. There's a curator in the audience this evening that I used to be in Brisbane and is now in Canberra, the National Gallery. And so we're like other people. Yeah. We have to move for careers and education and companionship as well.
Dusty is such a beautiful foil for Annabelle, and he is gorgeous. He does have a gorgeous body, but...
completely fictional.
Well,
no, he is. This is the joy of writing fiction. You can write the man you wish you had. You can write the sex you wish you were having. Sorry, Aunt.
But he also is... He and Annabelle have another great conversation, which is around the different ways that you can create change and influence things. And often we think about change being something that you march for and demonstrate against and rail against, but he has a very different perspective on that. And that was one of the things that struck me about the book, that it shows that there are many different ways that you can influence people and influence the world that you live in.
And I think Dusty, what we learn is very deep thinker. So we think, he's just Dusty the cowboy. The girlfriends have sort of written him off because they already think he's not right for her and so forth. But he's a very deep thinker. And he talks about, he pulls her into line also very gently. I don't expect you to do anything special for me. I'm not, don't change me sort of thing as well. He doesn't understand, though, I don't know if he truly understands the work of his twin brother, Daniel. Is it Daniel?
Yeah.
Is the character's name Daniel? Daniel Davies. I've written 2 books since then. Daniel Davies, and his twin brother's an artist, so he's like arty-farty, yada 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 yada, which is actually offensive to Annabelle, who works in the arts. Yeah. But he's actually a very deep thinker. And I saw that even with my father, who was a carpenter and didn't read. He read westerns and he didn't read much, and because he was working all the time, and then he'd go to sleep and get up because he was putting a roof over his 5 children's head and feeding them and so forth. But now and then he would just say something that told me that he had thought very deeply about whatever the issue was. And I think Dusty's that character as well. And it's a reminder not to judge a book by its cover, except this book because it's a beautiful cover. But don't look at a sexy cowboy and think that he's not a deep thinking human being. That he's just a sexy cowboy. Yeah. I mean, chances are he is. But no, I don't know. I didn't really meet any cowboys.
Do you?
So I had to stop the research at some point. Don't want to blur my creative process.
One of the other things I've noticed, you have a bit of a longing, I think, for a First Nations art gallery, because in Manhattan Dreaming and Paris Dreaming, Old Parliament House is remade as a gallery of First Nations art.
As it should have been.
And we have one appearing here in Brisbane. So how's that plan going?
Well, there's a fantastic gallery. It's not that gallery, but I was on the board of the Aboriginal Art Co, and it's in Brisbane, and I spent a lot of time there, and I've launched a couple of books there. And I used to be a communications advisor for the then Australia Council, which is now Creative Australia. So I was working with artists all the time, doing press releases and campaigns and events and so forth. And I'm in art galleries all the time. I think about this because as writers, we go to films, we go to the theatre, we read each other's books, we go to galleries. I very rarely see other artists come to book launches, from other art forms. But I buy, I'd like to buy art, and I appreciate art. And usually, like in Manhattan Dreaming and Paris Dreaming, I've mentioned actual artists because I like to promote artists and, you know, ask them for permission and what artwork would you like me to recommend, and musicians and so forth. But this time I created Daniel Davies when I went to the art gallery in Warwick and got inspired by some artwork that was there. But I'm interested in the arts. It's, you know, what I know.
And that idea of using your writing to lift other people up comes through very strongly. Troy Cassadaly does get quite a few plugs in this book. And a beautiful song of his, Dream Out Loud, gets a couple of mentions. I'm curious why you picked that song.
Well, you know, I don't even think I knew that song before I saw him perform that night, and I've got video footage, it's bad, of my friend and I. Everyone's singing, everyone was singing to that song, and everyone's standing up, and it's really about these two old fellas, one white fella, one black fella, and they talk over the fence and so forth. And I guess, for want of a better term, it's almost like a reconciliation song, but it's an uplifting, for me, hopeful song. And I'm a positive, glass half full kind of person. I wouldn't get out of bed if I wasn't. And so it's got a beautiful beat. I love listening to it in the car. So it was easy for me to write that into that moment and that song into the story. Because it's also, like he says in that song, if you see your brother fall, help him up. But also there's a line in there saying if you see your sister. And it's just about, you know, loving people and being kind. And I was in Margaret River recently and I interviewed Stan Grant about his new book. And it's called Muriong, Song of Time, and I highly recommend it. It's a beautiful meditation, a reflection on life and land and his father, Uncle Stan, and God. And at the end of the day, he's saying, and he said this to hundreds of people, the only way we can change the world is through love. And I firmly believe that as well. So I feel like that song has love in every line.
Beautiful. Thank you. Before we hear a little bit more from the book and wrap up, one last question. What are you working on now?
Working on... I've just submitted a novel set in Hawaii about 3 Wiradyuri women in their 50s.
I can't wait to see those costumes.
Okay. For being a bikini. And really, because, you know, I wrote that because I realised, like, women in their 50s were told the world tells you everything's dried up, literally, and, you know, love, romance, all that sort of thing. And I feel like I am the healthiest and the happiest I've ever been. You know, 3 years shy of 60. It's taken that long. And, you know, when you get to my age, you realise all the crap that you've worried about needlessly in your 30s and your 40s, and it's just like, don't worry about that. And so, but you know, I've been to Hawaii a few times, and I was there recently again to take a draft over to people. We have so much in common. So it's not chick lit, it's romance, it's commercial women's fiction. But we have so much in common with the Hawaiians in terms of sovereignty and colonisation and so forth. So that's woven through it as well. Obviously, there's a couple of really hot, gorgeous Polynesian men. That might be on the cover. You know those Mills and Boon covers with the Fabio and their shirt and whatever. Anyway,
that will go straight to the Mills and Boon stack.
But I'm also working on a historical novel set in 1927. You will have known of Jimmy Clements and John Noble, who walked from Brungle to Canberra for the opening of Parliament House. So working on that, but looking at the love story of my grandparents who got married in 1927. And my grandfather was in Brungle the years before that, and my grandmother was in service, and I've got their love letters. And so I want to write their love story because when Brungle was set up, it was around the same time as the Act of Protection in New South Wales. So I can draw on that. But that's going to be traumatic, like Didayawata was traumatic, because I'm going to have to go through my grandmother's welfare file. But that's what we do to help people learn. So that will come out in time for the anniversary in 2027, is the plan.
That's a lot happening.
Unless I meet my Dusty and I ride off into the sunset and never write another book again.
Thank you for your generosity tonight, but let's hear a bit more from Red Dust Running.
So I'm just going to share something from there. So we're on the Gold Coast and they're in this fancy pants hotel, And because she's a runner, she wants to go for a run and she wants Dusty to come. He's not having a bar of it. He wants to stay in bed. I'm the fittest man you'll ever meet, he tells me as he watches me put my running gear on. Really? I scoff. He rattles off his workout regime most days: jumping jacks, lunges, burpees, planks. I've got what you women call core strength, he says with a wink. I can see the ripple of his six-pack from the corner of my eye, remembering my hands and lips over it, running my hands and lips over it many times in the last 48 hours. I think everyone calls it core strength, not just women, I reply, trying to stay focused. He sits up, the sheet barely covering his lap, and it's so tempting to just strip off and climb back over him. What I do out on Sir Lancelot is as tough and dangerous as rugby league, but it also requires the finesse of a figure skater. You're sexy when you use fancy words like finesse. Say it again, I smile. And I've got the strongest groin in the land. He throws the sheet off and stretches his naked body out. It's the most glorious thing I've seen in the male form ever. He waves me over and whispers, "Come here, my little bull rider. Don't fight it." Do you know, this is how Colleen Hoover was made famous, because someone was reading her book on TikTok and that happened. So can you get on TikTok and do this? Come here. Come ride the strongest groin in the land. I am only human, and I can't resist. I tell myself it's okay not to run today, that I burned enough calories, worked enough muscles last night to count as a workout. When we finally worked out enough, I'm ready to go outside. Let's go to the beach and have a dip before it gets too crazy. Dusty is not keen. The beach isn't really my thing, sweetheart. I'm disappointed. But I bought you something special, I say, rummaging through the drawers and pulling out a plastic bag. I hand it to him with enthusiastic pride. I don't need gifts, he says, but thanks. He opens the bag and his tone changes. What the? He pulls out the budgie smugglers with the Koori flag on the bum. I'm sure he thinks they're undies. For the beach, I explain. I'm not wearing these to the beach or anywhere, he responds firmly, holding them up to the light. Should we even have the flag on our butts? Fair question. But I'm disappointed again. I don't want to make a big deal of it, and I'm sure Dusty will not appreciate me being a sook. He can read my face, though. He pulls me close to him and explains. You're very generous, sweetheart, but I don't wear these dick sticker things. I hardly even swim. The last time was in the Condamine River when I was a teenager. I don't even own a pair of shorts. Have you seen my wardrobe? I'm willing to acknowledge that it may not have been as thoughtful as it could have been. But you can't wear denim and dark shirts to the beach. I think I've hit a nerve when he tosses the swimwear to the chair near the bed. I can wear whatever I want, he says dismissively. You're never going to make me into a surfer dude. I'm not trying to make you into a surfer dude, I say defensively. I wore checks and bling jeans for you. I crushed my feet into boots for you. When did I ask you to do that? Any of that? Dusty asks, exasperated. You would have looked beautiful in a potato sack. Oh, someone said that to me once when I was young. I can feel tears threatening. I was trying to fit in, show I was interested in what you do, your lifestyle. Dusty leans back, his hands behind his head, completely calm, and it unnerves me. You don't have to do any of that for me. I don't want to fight, and I don't want to feel like shit. I'm going to the beach. I'll be back in a little while. I will not let a beautiful day on the coast be ruined, and by the time the lift reaches the ground floor, I'm close to being re-centred. When I cross the road, the market stalls are setting up for the final day of the music festival, and families are arriving for the day at the beach. So then she watches some nippers. Then she says, I lie back, position my sun hat over my face, and doze. Sweetheart? Sweetheart? I think I'm dreaming until Dusty touches me lightly on the arm and I spring upright. How long have you been here? I ask, fixing my sun hat. Just a minute. You were snoring, he chuckles. I don't snore. He laughs again, then stands up. He's wearing his hat, jeans, a navy t-shirt and thongs. At least he didn't wear his boots, I think to myself. When he takes his tee off, the side of his lats and the obvious strength in his back takes my breath away. But when he drops his jeans to reveal the cozies, I want to cry. Dusty, I exclaim. He spins around and his smile mirrors mine. I like it when you smile, sweetheart. My heart melts with the softness in his voice and he bends down to give me a peck. I don't like it when you look upset with me. You don't have a poker face when it comes to disappointment, that's for sure. I'm sorry. Sweetheart, if you can wear boots to give you blisters, and I think I can wear these for a minute, though, there's not much room. He squirms a bit, adjusting his balls, which makes me snicker. He turns around and looks out to the horizon, and I wonder if he's aware of the bikini-clad women nearby raising their sunglasses and smiling at him. Ladies, he drawls and throws them a wave. He's seen them all right, and he's loving it. Don't encourage them, I scold, amused and a little jealous. Harmless fun, sweetheart, harmless fun, he says, tipping his hat to another group perving on him as they stroll past. I have to laugh. Sit down, I say, pulling him next to me. Everyone knows you're here now. As long as you know I'm here, sweetheart. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thanks very much for a really fun evening, Anita and Catherine. There were some things said in this theatre tonight that I don't think have been said here before. So,
well, you know, Catherine didn't ask me who Charlie was. You can read about that.
Great. I was actually thinking about this idea, of course, of wanting to make sure that that the stories are on all pages, and that we make sure that we've got everything covered. Today, Luke, you were with us today when we took 3 new council members down into our stacks, and we pointed out the Mills and Bourne shelf. There's a reason we do that, because every new council member or visitor to the library they will say, surely you don't collect Mills and Bourne. And we say, of course we do, because we have to collect what people are writing in Australia, and we have to collect what people are reading in Australia. So thank you for writing this in Australia, and I think you're going to have a whole lot of people reading in Australia as well. It'll be fantastic. For those viewers who are watching online, we want to thank you for tuning in from across the nation. And if you want to watch the event again or share with friends and colleagues, just access it through our website or YouTube channel. I meant to say, we've got really good photographic holdings on rodeos and even some bull riding, I think. So we might have to find some of that.
I think I'm done,
you.
but anyway.
Okay, before you start your next book, ask us and we can probably get you some good content.
Awesome.
And if you've enjoyed this evening, our wonderful Indigenous engagement team is holding our next event during National Reconciliation Week. So this will be on Tuesday, the 27th of May. Put it in your calendars now. Join us as First Nations leaders from across the national cultural sector discuss their work with Indigenous cultural and intellectual property protocols, which is such an important part of our work and are a huge learning opportunity for many people like me who've spent my whole career working in institutions like this. Tickets are available on our website, and we hope to welcome you to the library again soon. Now, we're now going to move upstairs to the foyer where Anita will be signing copies of Red Dust Running. It's not Dusty doing the signing though. He's not here anywhere.
I should have got a cowboy, shouldn't I?
And of course, if you'd like to purchase a copy, you can of course do so from our bookshop up there in the foyer as well. But again, thank you so much, Anita. Anita's doing more for us tomorrow.
And thank you for coming, everybody.
And thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you. Fun.